The world of English literature has long derived wisdom, pleasure, provocation, challenge, is perplexed and ever wondering at the works of that bard of Avon, Shakespeare. So this is Othello. We have his one of his most poignant, very intense, very gripping tragedies here. In Othello, one may say that there is not a single light moment. There is no Falstaff, there is no clown, there is nobody to save us from that intense, powerful, tragic story. So let's see. First, in Act 1, Scene 1 and Scene 2, we will go through today. The act begins on a Venetian road, and on this street, two men who are both Venetians are walking and coming. And one is Iago, and the other is Rodrigo, his friend. And Iago is a very integral character of this drama, and he is introduced in the very beginning. And we see that he is complaining, he is speaking ill of somebody. He is speaking ill of his general, his commander, the warlike Moor or the war god, according to Iago, whose name is Othello. And it is about Othello that this story is going to unfold. But the very beginning or the first scene itself shows us that Iago is of equal or perhaps more importance than Othello. So here Iago is telling Rodrigo that he despises the Moor. He purely hates the Moor for a reason, and that is that he has been passed over for promotion. Now we see from Iago's words that he has long been the companion of this warlord. He says that I have fought with him in Rhodes and Cyprus. I have fought with him against Christians and heathens. And now, instead of taking me or promoting me to be his right-hand man, he has taken a certain Michael Cassio. And for that reason, I despise them both. And now here we come to a backstory or something that has already happened. We are made acquainted with the story that Othello, the warlord, has eloped or has married the beautiful Venetian lady Desdemona. And here is Rodrigo, who was once a suitor of Desdemona. He is a coxcomb, a foolish fop who has been to her father for her hand in marriage, but he has been refused by the fair Desdemona. And so now we see that the story begins by two people who have their own personal vendetta or their own personal reason for vengeance. And the very beginning of this drama, Rodrigo says, Iago, who hast had my purse as if the strings were thine. He says that you have a right over my purse as if the very strings belong to you. That shows us that Iago has a complete control of Rodrigo, of his purse, and Rodrigo's money is all set out at Iago's disposal. So from the beginning, we know that Iago is a very dominant character. He is a master manipulator. And he is now working on Rodrigo in such a way that Rodrigo is going to give all his money and his self at the hands of Iago. And this is one quote that is very important. I know my price, I am worth no worse a place. So here Iago says that he knows his own worth. He believes that he should be the one to command the army. And he also says that he sent three men, three wise and very famous and rich men of Venice in order to vouch for him, in order to speak up for him to the Moor. But the answer was negative. The answer that he got was that the Moor had already appointed somebody called Michael Cassio. And this is something that Iago cannot forgive. Here Rodrigo asks him, in that case, why do you still follow the Moor? Why do you still follow this man who has become a Venetian citizen, who has become the commander of all the armies, why do you still follow him? You must show your anger to him. And here Iago very cleverly says that I cannot do that, but I will pretend that I serve him, but at the same time, I will be the reason for his undoing. I will be the reason for his derangement and destruction. I follow him to serve my turn upon him. So I will follow him so that I can serve my turn upon him. I am going to follow him for the sake of having my revenge. And here he says one of the truest lines that Iago perhaps will say in this play: I am not what I am. This is a very important quote in the first act. By saying, I am not what I am, he is telling the audience to be prepared. He is telling everyone that he is not what you see. He is not that honest, simple soldier who has fought alongside his commander, who is faithful to the last. No, he is something else, something diabolical. And this line also brings to mind the line from the Bible by Saint Paul: by the grace of God, I am what I am. Where Saint Paul says that what you see is what you get, and I am such because of the grace of God. Iago says just the opposite: I am not what I am. And here he tells Rodrigo to make mischief. And this is the first part of his mischief. He says, let us go and call upon Brabantio. Now we have one more character introduced into the play, that is Brabantio. Let us call upon Brabantio and tell him that his daughter Desdemona has eloped with that Moor. And here they rush into Brabantio's house and they shout, thieves, thieves. Now here Shakespeare, who is, just as Iago is the master manipulator, Shakespeare being the master engineer of this script, actually makes us see something which is so intense. Here he shows us how an event, by being presented in a bad or evil manner, something which is actually good, can cause havoc. Now here we see that in Desdemona there is wit, beauty, piety, purity, loveliness, beauty. And what has it been tied to? It has been betrothed or tied to honor, dignity, bravery, strength. It has been a marriage of two equals, two people who are high in intellect and the purity of their intention. But here, Iago is going to present this marriage as something evil, something dishonorable. And for that, from the very beginning, he uses the words thieves. Brabantio, your house has been robbed. Something so valuable has been stolen from your house. Awake, awake, look to your house, to your daughter, he says. And Brabantio comes out, and when he sees Rodrigo, he says, Rodrigo, you have come as a suitor for my daughter, but I have told you never to blacken my door. And now you are making mischief. How can you, go so low as to dishonor my daughter, my fair child? I have told you not to haunt my doors. And here Rodrigo says, my dear Signor, your daughter has run away with a black Moor. Here the otherness of the Moor. Here we see that racial prejudice is brought into the story. The Moor Othello is of black ancestry, is of African origin, and he has come and proclaimed himself a Christian, a Venetian, and has long served the court of Venice. We must know that at that period it was a cosmopolitan world where people of different nations could come in and by their actions pay homage to whatever state that they have fought for. And here Rodrigo says, your daughter has tied her duty, beauty, wit, and fortunes in an extravagant and wheeling stranger of here and everywhere. This man who has been all over the world, is he a true Venetian? Now, here we see that they are pointedly telling Brabantio that three of them are Venetians, while this man is an outsider. And here we see the projecting of that, the fear of the other or the fear of the outsider. Brabantio immediately looks into his palace, into his house, into his palatial mansion to see if Desdemona is there, and realizes that she has gone. She has gone with the warlord and is far away. She has gone to the Cyprus wars. And he says, "Oh, unhappy girl, you have deceived your father." And then Brabantio makes a discovery, or he suddenly feels that it must be black magic. It must be some horrible witchcraft that has taken his daughter away from him. And he says, "Is there not charms by which the property of youth and maidenhood may be abused? Have you not read, Rodrigo, that there are such means by which such evil men may take away or kidnap young women?" And then Rodrigo then tells Brabantio, "I will lead you to your daughter, and you, sir, must do everything in your power to divorce them, to take them or pull them apart." And here we see that Iago is pouring oil into the fire. He uses very derogatory terms by saying that a black ram is now tapping your white ewe, is to tell, it is to use words which show only physical intimacy, sexual, sensual intimacy. That is to call them a black ram. Othello is referred to as a black ram, a Barbary horse. And such a creature has set upon your white ewe. Your sheep has been, spoiled and defiled. So here we come to scene 2, and we see that Iago, when the place was lighted up, he rushes away so that he will not be seen. And we have to understand here that Brabantio has seen only Rodrigo. Nobody has seen that Iago also had come there in order to betray his general. Now Iago quickly goes to Othello and speaks about Brabantio in a very derogatory way. He tells Othello, the great warlord, that Brabantio, the father of the fair Desdemona, despises him. He says that Brabantio is speaking in such a manner about you that I would rather kill him, because I am so incensed, I am so humiliated or hurt to listen to people speak about you in such a manner. Here we see that Iago is so diabolic. He is, I think, that even militant Satan or Dostoevsky's villains, even Chillingworth by Nathaniel Hawthorne, cannot compete with Iago. Literature has yet to come up with such an evil character. So now, but Othello immediately tells Iago that it is better not to fight. He then says that if her father should come here, I will speak to him and I will create peace. Yet again, Iago says that Brabantio is coming to get a potential divorce from you. Then Othello says, let him do his spite, let him come and try to harm me, but my duty to the state, what all that I have done, my services which I have done the Signory, shall outtongue his complaints, that my actions will speak for me. When he knows how loyal a servant of Venice, of the state I am, how I have fought wars against heathens and Christians for the sake of Venice, he will realize surely that I am a good man, that I love the gentle Desdemona and I would not under any condition dishonor her. So here we see that Othello describes Desdemona as the gentle Desdemona. And we see here, Shakespeare tells us that there is a very pure love between them. But here suddenly we see that there a group of men have come, and Iago thinks that it is Brabantio, but instead it is Michael Cassio, and Michael Cassio has come with a message from the Duke. The Duke has ordered Othello to his presence, for there is some trouble brewing on the Mediterranean Sea. There is a Turk warship coming in, and for the purpose of war, Othello is summoned by the Duke. At the same time, another group of men rush into the stage, and that is Brabantio and his group, his kinsmen, and people who have come to defend his honor. He comes here, and this is what he calls, he says, "O thou foul thief, where hast thou stowed my daughter? Damned as thou art, thou hast enchanted her. You are a damned man, and you have enchanted my daughter. If she in chains of magic were not bound, whether a maid so tender, fair, and happy, so opposite to marriage, my daughter who has always shunned marriage, she has sent away the darlings of Venice from my door. How can such a maiden come?" And here he insults and mocks Othello by saying, "Run from her guardian to thy sooty bosom." Yet again and again, we see a reference to the blackness or the color, the ancestry, the heritage of Othello that makes him somebody who is an outsider, even though all his life he has spent in serving the land of Venice. He has long ago been bound and brought to Venice, and since then has grown up fighting only for this country. Yet he is described as a black ram, as a thick-lipped Barbary horse, and now it is to his sooty bosom that Desdemona has run to. Thou hast practiced on her foul charms. You have abused her delicate youth, and you have made her fall for you. And for that I will take you to the Duke, and I will charge you with sorcery and black magic. You abuser, practicer of arts inhibited and out of warrant. And then he makes a very dramatic statement: lay hold upon him, if he do resist, subdue him at his peril. So he asks the men, if Othello is trying to run away, if he is going to go away, then pray catch him, hold him. But here Othello is very dignified, and we see that another very famous quote is, by a single line, Othello is able to quell the people. He simply says, "Put down your swords, lest the dew rust them." He knows that he does not want to fight this group of civilians. He knows that he has got the soldiers of his army beside him, and he is very respectfully, very gracefully telling Brabantio, "Sir, I respect you, and I do not want any of us to draw out our swords or do any harm." And with a single line, he is able to make them put their swords back in the sheath, because he is so commanding respect. He is quite awe-inspiring. From all these, we get a character of Othello. Othello is rather grand and heroic, whereas Iago, we have found by now, is a master manipulator, somebody who is so diabolic, who is evil incarnate. He is surely worse than Satan, Milton Satan, who has brought an end to Eden. So here we see Iago, who is planning destruction on the fair Desdemona and Othello. So now here is Brabantio's turn to be very surprised, because when he sees that a group of the Duke's men are calling Othello, he suddenly starts realizing that he is speaking to somebody quite important. And Othello quite cleverly says that, "What do? I must obey you, but at the same time the Duke has also asked for my services. So he then hints or shows that they may all follow him to the Duke. And Brabantio quickly takes up the offer, feeling that he could put his case before the Duke. How the Duke in council, says Brabantio, in this time of the night? Why would the Duke call upon you on this time of the night? Bring him away. Mine is not an idle cause. The Duke himself or any of my brothers of the state cannot but feel this wrong as if it were their own. Now we see that Brabantio identifies with the state, identifies with the Duke, and he says, the Duke or any of my fellow brothers, any fellow Venetians would definitely realize how I have been dishonored, I have been humiliated, and they will take up my cause. Here we see that the bigotry, or how people, when they are having their sameness, or people of their own kind, when they belong to a majority, how quickly they assume that their problems have to be identified or are the problems of the multitude. Whereas Othello, for all his greatness, for all the prizes and all the distinctions that he has won through his actions, is still the outsider, is still not confident. He still feels that he has to keep proving to Venice that he is a good Venetian. So Shakespeare makes us go into the psychology of humankind, how man treats the unknown, how fear is there, and the stereotyping of people of whom we do not know, of cultures, of traditions that we do not know. And he says, here we see that this Act 2 ends with an insult to Othello, where Brabantio says, for if such actions may have passage free, bond slaves and pagans shall our statesmen be. Now, if these kind of actions are not stopped, here we see that Othello may go and save the state. He may be the commander or the general of the army. He has killed for the state of the sake. But if he is to marry a beautiful Venetian lady, then he has to jump over the hurdle of racial prejudice, such that Brabantio says that if this is the way the world is going to be, soon bond slaves and pagans, people who are not Christians, will soon become our statesmen and they will rule over us. Thank you.